Good morning, everybody, or whenever you're listening to this. We're about to read chapter 28. All right, so it was cold now and dark came early. The color had leached out of the grass, and Butter's field, and he'd started to grow thin. When I showed this to Susan, she sighed. "It's all the exercise you're giving him," she said. "He used to be fat enough he could winter over on grass," meaning like he could eat enough and be fine through the winter and not have to really eat. She bought hay and we stacked it in one of the empty stalls. She bought a bag of oats too. Each day I took Butter 3 or 4 flakes of hay and a bucket of grain. He still lived outside. Fred said it was healthier for him, as well as being less work for us. Back then the leaves had first started changing color on the trees. I'd been alarmed. Susan promised that it happened every year. The leaves changed colors and fell off, and the trees would look dead all winter, but they wouldn't actually be dead. In spring they'd grow new leaves again. How crazy she doesn't understand, the change in the seasons. Susan had gotten over being surprised at all the things we didn't know. When she showed me how to cook or sew something, she always started at the very beginning. "This is a needle. Look, it has a little hole on one end for the thread to loop through and a point on the other end so it can go into the cloth. Or, eggs have a clear part called the white and a yellow part called the yolk. You break an egg by tapping it on the edge of the table and then cracking it open with your hands. Only over a bowl like this." Susan said winter usually made me feel sad and gloomy, the way she was when we first came. This winter, though, she was almost too busy to be sad. She had to shop and cook and clean and do the wash. She was particular about the wash and sew and go and go to meetings. But as the days grew shorter, she did seem sad. She made an effort for us, but you could tell it was an effort. She was always tired. I tried to be helpful. I cooked and sewed buttons. I went with her to the shops. I learned to hem bed jackets. Meanwhile, I still helped Fred twice a week and rode Butter every day. On a rainy cold Wednesday afternoon, Susan sat slumped in her chair. I had finished washing the lunch dishes. Jamie had gone to school. The fire was burning low, so I added coal and poked it a little. "Thank you," Susan murmured. She looked frail and shivery. She'd spilled a bit of potato from lunch down the front of her blouse and not scrubbed it clean, which wasn't like her. I didn't want her staying in bed all day again. I sat down on the sofa and I looked at her and I said, "Maybe you could show me how to read." She looked up disinterestedly. "Now?" I shrugged. She sighed. "Oh, very well." We went to the kitchen table and she got out a pencil and paper. "All the words in the world are made up of just 26 letters," she said. "There's a big and a little version of each." She wrote the letters out on the page and named them all. Then she went through them again. Then she told me to copy them onto another piece of paper, and then she went back to her chair. I stared at the paper. I said, "This isn't reading, this is drawing." "Writing," she corrected. "It's like buttons and hymns. You gotta learn those before you can sew on the machine. You gotta know your letters before you can read." I suppose so, but it was boring. When I said so, she got up again and wrote something along the bottom page. "What's that?" I asked. "Ada is a curmudgeon," she replied. Ada is a curmudgeon. I copied it at the end of my alphabet. It pleased me. It means like a grouchy person. After that, with help from Jamie, I left Susan little notes every day. "Susan is a big frog." That one made Jamie giggle. "Butter is the best pony ever." "Jamie sings like a squirrel." And then some papers I kept because they were useful and I could put them on the kitchen table whenever I needed to leave Susan a message. It made me happier when she knew where we were. Ada's at Fred's. Ada's writing Butter. Jamie went to the airfield. What? He wasn't supposed to, but he did. They'd gotten so used to him sneaking in under the fence that they hardly bothered to scold him anymore. Only if they say I have to leave right away. Jamie told me. If they don't say so, I can stay and talk to them. Planes fascinate him. He's made friends with the pilots, and they let him sit inside the Spitfires when they are parked in the field. Susan asked us how we usually celebrated Christmas. We didn't know what to say. Christmas was a big day at the pub, so Mom always worked. She'd get lots of tips, and usually we'd have something good to eat, fish and chips or a meat pie. "Do you hang up your stockings?" Susan asked. Jamie frowned. "For what?" We'd heard of Father Christmas. It was something other children talked about, but we didn't get a visit from him. I said, "What do you usually do?" Her face went soft, remembering. "The Christmases when Becky was alive, we'd have a big dinner with some of the friends," she said. "Roast goose or turkey. In the morning we'd exchange presents. We always had a little tree and we decorated the windowsills with holly, and then we'd have something wonderful for breakfast, hot sticky buns and bacon and coffee, and then we'd just laze around until it was time to start making dinner. On Boxing Day, Becky would go hunting. When I was little, my family all went to the midnight services on Christmas Eve. My father would preach. The church always looked beautiful in the cold candlelight. Then I'd go to sleep, and such a short sleep, and wake up to my stocking filled with little presents all at the foot of my bed. The bigger gifts were downstairs under the tree. Mother cooked a huge meal, and all the aunts and uncles and cousins came. Her voice trailed away. "We'll do something nice," she said, "for your first Christmas here." "Can Mom come?" Jamie asked. Susan put her hand on his head. "I hope she will," she said. "I'd invite her, but I haven't gotten a reply." "I'll write to her," Jamie said. "You don't have to," I told him. It seemed risky. If it reminded Mom we were here, would she come and get us? "We need to talk to her about your foot," Susan said. "When I'm not writing." "Well, I'm not writing," I said. I had memorized the alphabet and was starting to understand how the letters should sound, so that I could read even words I hadn't seen before. I could write a bit, but not to Mom. "You don't have to," Susan said, her arms around me. The shop's filled with the most amazing things, oranges and nuts and all sorts of candy and toys. Susan said people were determined to have a happy Christmas despite the war. She herself ordered a goose, since Jamie and I never had one, and then she invited some of the pilots from the airfield to come eat with us, because the goose was too big for the three of us alone. I invited Fred, but he said he always went to his brother's house, and he didn't like to break tradition. "But thank you kindly," he added. So I invited Maggie. It seemed right to me that if Jamie got to have pilots, I should have a friend to dinner too. Besides Fred and Stephen, Maggie was the only friend I had. She came back from her school the week before Christmas. We rode together up a big hill where the wind was blowing hard and we could see down to the barricaded beach. Maggie was different, stiffer, and more standoffish than she'd been the day I rode her home. She looked elegant on her pony, with her leather gloves and her little velvet cap. I put my hand up to shield my eyes. Riding up the hill had been my idea. "I always checked for spies when I'm up here," I said. "We're supposed to, you know. We were told by the government on the radio. Nazi spies could be dressed as nurses or nuns or anything." "I know," Maggie said crossly. "I'm not stupid." Then she added, "Why didn't you write me back?" "I asked you to." "I hadn't known," she asked me. Fred hadn't read me that part of her letter, and while I'd had another couple of goes at reading it, Maggie's handwriting was curly with the letters running together. I couldn't make out the words. I was ashamed to admit this. "I've been very busy," I said. She flashed me a look of hurt and anger. I understood suddenly that she'd been writing for me to write back, wanting and hoping for a letter. I didn't know she felt that way about me. I took a deep breath. "I'm just now learning to write," I said, "and read, so I couldn't write back yet. I'm sorry, next time I'll try." Instead of looking horrified by my ignorance, she looked more mollified. Susan taught me that word, and I loved it. Mollified. Something when Jamie was cross, he had to be mollified. "I didn't think of that," she said. "I thought you just weren't interested, but wouldn't Miss Smith have helped you? She would have written down what you wanted to say." "She would have if I asked." I didn't want to ask her. I don't like her helping me. "Why ever not?" "I don't want to get used to her," she said. I said, "She's just someone you have to stay with for a little while. She's not, actually real." Maggie looked me up and down. "She seems very real," she said. I saw you the day you got off that train. You looked like you'd already been through a war. Then you looked better the day you helped me. And now, side saddle on a pony in fancy clothes and not so skinny, your bones show. Your eyes are different too. Before you looked scared to death." I didn't want to talk about it. There weren't any spies in view, nor any ships, and Butter was tired of standing in the wind. "Reach to the village," I said. So it's interesting that, she's changed so, in her looks and everything. She's so much healthier and happier. But I think deep down she's also much happier, but she doesn't want to admit it because if the mom came, all this could be taken away. And, that's probably a very scary thought, that life could go back to how it was, which would be very hard. Chapter 29. Maggie won, but not by much, and I stayed in the saddle the whole time, even though Butter galloped faster than he'd ever gone before. We followed Maggie's pony over 2 fallen logs, like soaring jumps, but my first. By the time we pulled up on the outskirts of town, both ponies blowing hard. Maggie's hair had come loose from its plait, and her cheeks were bright red. She was laughing. She'd forgotten I ever looked scared. I knew Susan wasn't real, or if she was a tiny bit real, sometimes at the very best she was only temporary. She'd be done with us once the war was over, or whenever Mom changed her mind. Maggie couldn't come for Christmas dinner. She said she wished she could, but her brother was expected home from aviation training, and her father was coming from whatever he was doing, secret war work, and they were having their traditional Christmas. So, of course, she had to stay home. I'll be miserable. It'll be a miserable day, she said. Mom will be trying not to blubber over Jonathan, so she'll be snippy with everyone. Dad's wound up about Hitler and won't talk about anything but the war, especially since there's no honey, and Mom hates talking about the war. The cook quit to work in the factory, and the housekeeper's an awful cook, and we've not got but one maid left, and no footman in the house at all. Meaning, boys and girls, they are very rich. They have maids. They have cooks. A footman is like someone who helps you get dressed and literally does everything for you. So I'll be scrubbing on Christmas Eve, and Mom will be trying to help cook, and we'll sit down in this big fancy room with cobwebs in the corners and eat horrible food and pretend to be cheerful, and nothing will be like it used to. Ada and what's the girl's name? Maggie are complete opposites. Like, Maggie thinks her life kind of is terrible right now, where she has still more than Ada's ever had, which is kind of crazy. It's a good thing on perspective. Like, you don't realize how good you have it. People keep saying it isn't really war, she said. Hardly anybody's being bombed. Hardly anybody's fighting. It feels like a war to me. A war right in my family. She gave me a sideways look. You're probably happy, she said. I'm not happy because you're so miserable, I shot back. She shook her head. Oh, of course not. Come on. We were riding again, but this time we took a path Maggie chose, through woods down to the beach. We had to stay on the far side of the barbed wire, but we followed the road along the beach and watched the waves crash against the shore. It amazed me how different the ocean could look from day to day. Susan took an axe and made us go with her, out into somebody's field and cut down a little tree. It was not a tree that went dead in the winter. It had little green spikes on its branches instead of leaves, and Susan called it an evergreen. It was snowing and the air was wet and cold. What for? I asked. Susan and Jamie lugged the tree home while I walked with my crutches beside them. Christmas trees, Susan said. Remind us that God is like an evergreen tree, even in winter, never dead. But you said the other trees weren't dead either, Jamie pointed out. Well, no, they're not, Susan said, but they look dead, and Christmas trees are a nice tradition. Green in the midst of winter, light in the midst of darkness. It's a metaphor for God. I ignored the word metaphor, but asked, what's Christmas got to do with God? Well, you would think I'd said something really, really odd. Susan gaped at me, mouth open, fish-like, and when she finally closed her mouth, she sputtered, Have you been learning anything going to church? I shrugged. Church was hard to follow. Sometimes the stories made sense, but mostly they didn't. And although the vicar seemed nice, I almost never actually listened to him. I might have liked the songs if I could read them fast enough to actually sing. It turned out Christmas was Jesus' birthday. Jesus was the man hanging on the cross in the front of the church. I knew that part already. So easy enough. But then Jamie asked, how did they know when Jesus' birthday was? Susan said, well, I don't suppose they did know. Not absolutely. Jamie nodded, like Ada and me. Right, Susan said. But we've got your pretend birthdays on your identity card, so we'll celebrate your birthdays on those days. Christmas is like that day. Jamie said, was Christmas the birthday on Jesus' identity card? You stupid, I said. Jesus wasn't in a war. Don't call him stupid, Susan said. It was a stupid thing to say. Saying something stupid doesn't make you stupid, Susan said. Luckily for all of us. We took the tree into the house and set it up in the corner of the living room. Susan put a string of little electric lights in the branches. We went to Becky's room upstairs, and she came out with a big box. She looked inside, blinked back tears, and shut the box again. Let's make our own ornament, she said. Would you like to do that? How would I know? I could tell she wanted me to like it, and I didn't want her to cry. It made me nervous when she cried. Yes, I said. Oh, Ada, she gave me a hug with her free arm. I took a deep breath and didn't pull away. These are the ornaments Becky and I put on our tree together. I'm not ready to have them out again. Okay, I said. Okay, she asked. Really? I didn't know what to say. Somehow Christmas was making me feel jumpy inside. All this talk about being together and happy and celebrating it felt threatening. Like I shouldn't be part of it, like I wasn't allowed. And Susan wanted me to be happy, which was even scarier. Ornaments were pretty little things you hung on the Christmas tree. Susan got out colored paper and scissors and glue. She showed us how to make snowflakes and stars. I worked hard to make mine as good as hers. Jamie cut his paper quick into ragged shapes. We hung them all up, ragged and careful both, and the tree did look pretty in the corner of the room. Bravo thought so too. He lay under it during the day, batting the lowest ornaments with his paws. Jamie wadded up some of the leftover paper, and in the evening tossed it back and forth across the room for Bovril to bounce upon. I hated sharing my bed with a cat. Sometimes I woke up with his tail on my face, and there always seemed to be hair on the sheets. Jamie insisted he could only see that Bovril was tucked in with him, and Bovril, drat him, seemed to feel the same way. It snowed again. When I rode Butter over to Maggie's, snow balled up under his feet and clumped in the bottom of his tail. The whole world was white and sparkling. Snow in London didn't stay for long. Maggie had been helping Fred every day since she'd come home, and on the day when I was there, we all worked together. Fred had started me properly jumping now. Little jumps, but not today because the snow was too deep. You know you're supposed to get Susan a Christmas present, Maggie said as we measured oats in the feed room. Why? I asked. I heard about presents. I didn't get them. I didn't need to give them. I said so. Maggie rolled her eyes at me. Of course you'll be getting a present, she said. Susan is nice to you, not like some. I nodded. Some of the evacuees, who else is that? Some of the evacuees, those that were left, weren't treated very kindly. Not because of anything to do with them, but because they'd been put with mean old hags who wouldn't welcome Jesus himself. At least that's what Jamie said. He talked to other evacuees at school, and they were envious. That they hadn't been chosen last. So, Maggie said, you should get her something. It's only right. I haven't got any money, not at all. Don't you get pocket money? No, do you? Oh, Maggie said. She chewed her bottom lip while she thought, well, you could find some job to do and earn something, I suppose. Or you could make something. She'd like that. My mom always likes it when I make her something. It was an interesting idea. I thought about it as I started home. Susan had been teaching me to knit so that I could knit for the soldiers, but so far the only thing I'd made had been a washcloth. It was a hideous washcloth, wider on one end than the other, with loopy stitches that looked nothing like Susan's. Susan claimed it didn't matter because soldiers would be glad to have a washcloth no matter what it looked like. She also said knitting was like riding like a horse, or anything else. You get better the more you work at it. I could work at it if I hurried. I turned Butter in the road, and despite his protest, made him go back through the snow to Maggie's house. Fred looked surprised to see me. Trouble, he asked. I need some wool. Wool, I said. Next time we'll read chapter 30. Bye, guys.